He is a perfectionist, a trait that practically everyone we've talked about possesses. They are meticulous. Jack Nicholson had an illustrious 50-year career and 12 Oscar nominations. However, his acting was not his greatest secret. It has to do with Ray, his son. People observed the striking similarity for decades. The same expression, the same ferocity, even the same unsettling smile. Ray resisted it, picking a profession other than performing. However, he eventually ceased running in 2024. Hollywood was astonished by his breakthrough performance. Furthermore, Jack's recent admission of what he anticipated demonstrates that he was aware that this day would come. A huge secret that followed Jack Nicholson for almost 40 years, without him realizing it was the beginning of his life. He was born on April 22, 1937, in Neptune, New Jersey, into what appeared to be a typical household. But the truth was concealed beneath well-crafted lies. As a child, he thought that June Nicholson was his elder sister, who had left home to pursue her goals in show business. And Ethel May Nicholson was his mother. Lorraine, his aunt, was even introduced as a sister. Everyone, including friends, neighbors, and extended relatives, got along. The quiet was never broken by anyone. Even before he was born, the plan had been established. To ensure that no one back home would learn the truth, June gave birth to him in New York City, far from Neptune. It was a 37-year-old unwritten agreement. The deception began when June was barely 17 years old. She had moved to New York from Neptune and found work as an Earl Carroll dancer, which at the time was a dazzling career for any young woman. Then she got pregnant, though. Decades later, the father, a married guy named Don, would assert paternity as a former boyfriend. June's admission that she wasn't totally certain who the father was exacerbated the scandal. Being an unmarried mother was socially disastrous in 1937. It might ruin entire futures, professions, and reputations. June returned home in embarrassment, handed up her child, and consented to spend the rest of her life as his sister. That secret remained hidden until 1974. At the age of 37, Nicholson had just finished Chinatown, and was on a high after doing 15 movies in a short period of time. Time magazine was fact-checking every aspect of his life, in preparation for a big cover feature. Researchers discovered strange gaps in the records during this process. They told Nicholson something he couldn't believe when they called him. It was possible that the man he believed to be his father was still alive. In reality, June was his mother, and Ethel May was his grandma. The discovery was made just before the release of the film Chinatown, which is about unsettling family secrets. It was nearly impossible to believe the irony. "It's the most messed up thing I've ever heard," Nicholson exclaimed over the phone to his uncle Shorty, after first hearing it. "A guy calls me and tells me my father's alive, that Ethel May wasn't my mother, that June was my mother." Shorty initially denied it, until acknowledging its veracity. June and Ethel May had both passed away by then. Nicholson would never be able to question them about their actions. Long before this, in 1955, Nicholson began his career in Hollywood as a male clerk in the animation division of MGM. He was employed by Tom and Jerry's creators, Joseph Barbera and William Hanna. He even declined their offer of a position as an animator. Rather, he got his first audition thanks to a fortunate break in the mailroom. On August 18, 1958, he made his big screen debut in The Crybaby Killer. He was 20 years old. An adolescent kidnaps a woman and infant in the movie. It was trimmed to just 1 hour and 21 minutes, and released as a double feature with another movie. Before making a comeback on DVD in 2006, it was a box office failure and disappeared for decades. Nicholson nearly drowned in 1963, while filming The Nightmare with Boris Karloff. The weight dragged him under, while he was dressed in a bulky military outfit for an ocean scene. The film, which had 5 different directors, and began as a 2-day shot using unused sets, took 9 months to complete. Its tumultuous production contributed to its cult status. Nicholson met actress Sandra Knight on that same doomed production. Jennifer, their daughter, was born in 1963 after their 1962 marriage. It lasted until 1968 and was his only marriage. Low-budget horror movies and the difficulty of landing a consistent acting job characterized those years. He was also writing by 1967. He earned much-needed money by writing the script for the psychedelic movie, The Trip, which was about LSD. He co-wrote Head for the Monkeys the following year. Up to his breakthrough performance in Easy Rider in 1969, these endeavors kept him afloat. He never looked back after that. In a New York diner at the beginning of 1968, Rip Torn was seated across from Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper. They were discussing a recently released film. Torn had been written the part of an inebriated lawyer, George Hansen. However, in the midst of casual talk and beverages, Hopper began to rant about rednecks he had encountered while researching potential locales in the South. As a proud Texan, Torn took it seriously. The atmosphere became tense. The words became more incisive. Voices arose. Hopper then reached for a steak knife. The damage was done, but no one was harmed. On that night, Tor left the project. In 1994, years later, Hopper admitted to Jay Leno that Tor was the one who had stabbed him. Tor was enraged. After suing Hopper, he cleaned his name and received about $1 million. However, Jack Nicholson benefited from his loss. Nicholson took over after Torn left. His life would be changed by the part. With a loud, squeaky Texas drawl that went down in history, Nicholson played George Hansen. The movie was stolen from its own stars by the picture of him wearing a football helmet, smiling and drinking. When the Academy revealed that he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, he was 32. The film's production cost was a mere $360,000. Here it was at the Oscars, though. Nicholson was more than just a name in low-budget movies anymore. Hollywood had to take him seriously all of a sudden. When Easy Rider debuted in theaters on July 14, 1969, it evolved into more than just a film. For a restless generation, it served as a mirror. Young Americans are moving away from conformity, tradition, and the Vietnam War. The counterculture and the formal world were connected by Nicholson's George Hansen, a man who truly belonged to neither but understood both. The movie inspired fashion, music, and lifestyle trends. It contributed to the beginning of the new Hollywood age, in which riskier, smaller ventures could compete with major studio films. And that rebellion was now linked to Nicholson's face. He had previously been confined to minor TV roles and Roger Corman B films, often for as little as a few hundred. In a single summer, Easy Rider altered that. With $41.7 million in the US alone, the film brought in $60 million worldwide. Payrolls for Nicholson increased to 6 digits. People started comparing him to James Dean and Marlon Brando. He told his agency that he wanted unconventional jobs now, stating, "Your name becomes a brand. You become Campbell's Soup with 31 varieties of roles." In Easy Rider, Nicholson did more than just play the part. He assisted with editing after filming. Dennis Hopper had 80 hours of uncut footage that needed to be shaped into a narrative, and Nicholson worked alongside editor Henry Jagham to concentrate on the scenes after his character arrived. This kind of involvement was uncommon for a supporting actor. It provided Nicholson with an inside look at filmmaking, knowledge that would help him in the years to come. In 1970, Nicholson played Robert Dupia, a former pianist who was unable to fit anywhere and was hiding among oil workers. The role felt personal to Nicholson, and critics hailed it as a breakthrough for male characters because it showed a level of raw emotion that was uncommon for men on screen. Carnal Knowledge. Mike Nichols's daring and explicit examination of sex, frustration, and aging was released in 1971. The movie received 4 Oscar nominations, including 1 for Best Actor for Nicholson. One scene became iconic. In a diner, Dupe orders toast through a series of ridiculous substitutions, echoing a real argument Nicholson had years earlier at a Sunset Strip restaurant. In The Last Detail 1973, Nicholson played Billy Badass Badusky, a Navy lifer who escorted a young seaman to prison for stealing $40 from a charity box. Adjusted for inflation, that was about $277. Nicholson played Jonathan for 25 years, from swaggering college kid to bitter, impotent man. The language was shocking for its time. In Chinatown 1974, a masterpiece that was nominated for 11 Oscars, Nicholson played Private Eye Jake Gittes, who uncovered a web of corruption and family secrets. The set had its own fireworks. Nicholson gave the character humor, defiance, and a streak of kindness, earning him his 3rd consecutive Oscar nomination. Chinatown is still regarded as one of the best films of the new Hollywood era, and Nicholson, a die-hard Lakers fan, once kept the entire crew waiting for more than an hour because a game had gone into double overtime. Roman Polanski, who didn't care about basketball, stormed into his trailer, grabbed the TV, and threw it out. In order to prepare, Jack Nicholson entered a real mental institution and remained long enough to feel its walls close in. He observed patients closely, listening to the slight noises of the ward at night and the heavy silence in the morning, and observing their speech, tics, and movements when no one was looking. Crew members noticed that Nicholson didn't always leave MC Murphy behind when the cameras stopped. And even during breaks, that unpredictable energy clung to him, as if the character had moved in and locked the door. After weeks inside, the distinction between acting and reality became so hazy that Nicholson himself started to wonder what sanity even meant. By March 29, 1976, the gamble had paid off. After 4 nominations, Nicholson finally won his first Oscar for Best Actor at the 48th Academy Awards. He stood on stage for less than a minute, smiling, and said, "I guess this proves there are as many nuts in the Academy as anywhere else." It was the epitome of a McMurphy moment, immediate, irreverent, and unforgettable. Although leaving MC Murphy behind was more difficult than winning the statue, friends and family noticed glimpses of the character even when Nicholson was not on set. He had defeated some of the most formidable opponents the Best Actor category had ever seen, solidifying his place among the greats. The edge was there, but so was the charm. MC Murphy was erratic, a man who could try to strangle someone one moment and smile the next. This darkness permeated Nicholson's own demeanor, making it difficult to distinguish between the character and the role. Those close to him started to worry that the confrontation and rebellion weren't just for the camera anymore. The movie itself became a phenomenon, earning over $18 million in the United States, on a budget of only $3 million. It was the second highest grossing film of the year, right behind Jaws, and it achieved something that no other film in history had ever done. It won all 5 major Oscars. The film was released on November 20, 1975. The role became the template for many of his best performances, and you could see bits of MC Murphy and Jack Torrance's madness in The Shining, the acerbic defiance of A Few Good Men, and even the rough edges of Melvin Oud Dahl in As Good as It Gets. He became the most charismatic rebel on screen. Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. And MC Murphy never really left Nicholson. Stanley Kubrick was known for being obsessive, and on the set of The Shining, his obsession became something the cast and crew would never forget. MC Murphy had changed his profession forever, and perhaps changed him as well. He was the man who could captivate you while ripping down the barriers surrounding him. Since Kubrick wanted perfection, Nicholson had to remain in a state of pure madness for hours at a time, and the scene where he slashes through the bathroom door required more than 400 takes. The truth is slightly different, but no less extreme. The scene alone took 3 days to shoot and destroyed 60 real doors. Nicholson described the entire process as the most frustrating experience of his career, and Kubrick even broke the Guinness World Record for the most takes of a single scene, filming a kitchen sequence 148 times. The director persisted with the same question: how can we do this better than it has ever been done before? It wasn't just the constant repetition. Kubrick wouldn't let stand-ins, and Nicholson had to be present for lighting setups, which kept him under constant pressure, which permeated his performance, and gave Jack Torrance a terrifyingly real feel. Then came the line that would go down in horror history as the most famous. Although it wasn't in Stephen King's novel or the script, Nicholson took the line, "Here's Johnny from The Tonight Show," where Ed McMahon used to introduce Johnny Carson, and transformed it into a frightening phrase that millions of Americans had heard in a familiar and pleasant setting. The line no longer belonged to Johnny Carson, it belonged to horror. Life on set was intense, and the combination of Nicholson's method acting and Kubrick's mind games created an atmosphere that felt unsafe at times. Kubrick nearly cut it out of the movie, but he knew it was too powerful to lose when he saw it through the splintered wood. Nicholson would work himself into a frenzy, pace, and swing the axe before takes. Shelley Duvall's stress was so intense that her hair began to fall out. She once showed Kubrick clumps of it in her hands, and Kubrick purposely pushed her to tears, thinking that only genuine fear would be captured on screen. Nicholson's anger, whether it was genuine or staged, was so convincing that crew members occasionally worried about what they were witnessing. One person on the set, however, was someone Kubrick made sure to keep safe at all costs: 6-year-old Danny Lloyd. Kubrick told him they were filming a family drama and, whenever a scene appeared scary, they swapped out the actors for life-size dummies, so Lloyd wouldn't see anything frightful. When he eventually viewed the entire film as a teenager years later, he discovered that the twins he had played with were ghosts, and that his on-screen father was attempting to kill him with an axe. Nicholson saw just tightly edited material with no horror aspects. Critics viewed horror as lowbrow entertainment, and he had already won an Oscar in 1980 for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and would win another a few years later for Terms of Endearment. The Shining received mixed reviews, and even received Razzie nominations for Worst Director and Worst Actress. While some felt Nicholson's performance was too extravagant, it eventually became his most iconic role, demonstrating that horror could be just as powerful as any drama. It would be impossible to recount Nicholson's career without mentioning Anjelica Huston, who he dated for 17 years, at his birthday party on Mulholland Drive in 1973. At the time, Huston was 22 years old, recently returned from London, and already captivated by Nicholson after watching Easy Rider. Nicholson was 36, Hollywood's bad boy, and they danced through the night, but there were already indications of trouble. The pattern began when Nicholson canceled their first date because he had to meet his ex. In 1985, they starred in the dark comedy, Pretty's Honor, which was directed by her father, John Huston, and featured Nicholson and Kathleen Turner as the main characters, with Anjelica playing the mobster's daughter. The film cost $16 million to make and made $26 million. For a short time, their personal and professional lives were in harmony, their genuine chemistry lighting up the screen. However, that ended in 1989, when Nicholson began an affair with Rebecca Broussard, a waitress-turned-model who was 18 years younger than him. It was nominated for 8 Oscars, and Anjelica won Best Supporting Actress. It was an open secret in Hollywood, and the humiliation was devastating. Huston learned that Broussard would have 2 of his children, Lorraine in 1990 and Ray in 1992, while they were still together. Nicholson didn't break up with her and assumed life would continue as usual. Then came the ping-pong paddle scandal. The timing was even worse because Huston had just found out about Broussard's pregnancy. This was not just betrayal, it was public humiliation. At last, Huston lost it and stormed into Nicholson's office, physically attacking him, letting loose nearly 2 decades of anger. Tabloids detailed Nicholson's sexual encounter with a younger woman involving the paddle in graphic detail. The Hollywood bachelor who had ridiculed the idea of marrying her was finally forced to face the repercussions of years of emotional cruelty. Jack Nicholson was already a Hollywood legend when he stepped into the role of Garrett Breedlove in Terms of Endearment, and he later acknowledged that he felt he deserved it. Huston even thanked him for allowing her to hit him. He was an aging astronaut, a shameless charmer who found himself unexpectedly falling for Shirley Mann's Aurora Greenway. But this time, he wasn't the dangerous rebel or the insane mastermind. Instead, he was vulnerable, a softness that audiences hadn't seen in him before. At the box office, the movie made $165 million worldwide, making it the second biggest hit of 1983, right behind Return of the Jedi. It received 11 nominations and 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. Nicholson's win for Best Supporting Actor at the Academy Awards demonstrated to the world that he could be a great ensemble actor, a romantic drama star, and still take center stage with a sly joke in his acceptance speech. In A Few Good Men, director Rob Reiner filmed it from every angle, but Nicholson's explosive delivery made every frame electrifying. 9 years later, he stood in a courtroom wearing Colonel Jessup's uniform, ready to deliver a line that would reverberate through pop culture forever. The film received a ton of critical acclaim and box office receipts, earning him his 11th Oscar nomination. As good as it gets, Nicholson responded to the question of whether he could still carry a film on his own by 1997 with a snarl and a smile. Playing Melvin Oud Dahl, a brilliant but bitter novelist with obsessive-compulsive disorder, Nicholson made audiences hate him, pity him, and somehow love him. That one moment became bigger than the film itself, slipping into everyday conversations, comedy sketches, and memes. With a $50 million budget, the film made over $314 million worldwide. And Nicholson, at 60, was not fading. In fact, he was demonstrating that he could still become a memorable character. The performance earned him his 3rd Oscar and Helen Hunt her first, making it the last movie to win both lead acting awards at the same ceremony. When Batman came out in 1989, Nicholson's Joker wasn't just a hit, it was a payday for the history books. Rather than accepting a $10,000 fee, he made a deal that included $6 million up front and a cut of the box office, plus profits from Joker merchandise. The movie made $41 million worldwide, and the toys were a huge hit. His take, when all was said and done, was about $90 million, or roughly $194 million today. He even managed to get benefits like daily breaks, Lakers game attendance, and special shooting schedules. It was more than just a role, it was a master class in Hollywood negotiating. Nicholson co-starred with Morgan Freeman in The Bucket List in 2007. The film's writer, Justin Zachem, coined the term bucket list to describe the two men racing through their final adventures before death. And it was a hit, earning over $175 million in a budget of $45 million. For Nicholson, the role felt like a quiet farewell, even though no one knew it at the time. However, his next movie, How Do You Know 2010, was a complete failure, with a budget of $120 million, only making $48.7 million worldwide. Critics criticized it, and the loss was enormous, reaching $140 million. 3 years later, whispers started. According to reports, Nicholson had retired because he had memory loss and couldn't remember his lines. Friends denied this, but his absence from Hollywood only served to fuel the rumors. The only times we see Nicholson are at Lakers games, where he used to play every season. Roles came and went, but Nicholson stayed away, telling Vanity Fair that he just didn't want to act again. After missing almost 2 years, he made a comeback in 2023 for a playoff game. Sunglasses on, smile in place, which fans dubbed the Lakers' lucky charm. Growing up with a father who was both wildly famous and completely absent was a reminder that even legends leave unfinished stories behind. In 2023, his estranged daughter Tessa Goran also spoke out publicly for the first time, claiming that Nicholson had never acknowledged her and comparing her life to that of orphan Annie. Jack Nicholson received 12 nominations, more than any other male actor in Academy Award history, and his run spanned 33 years, from 1970 to 2003. His legacy goes beyond his accolades. It also highlights how hard it is to remain that good for that long. What's even stranger is that, along with Michael Caine, he is one of only 2 actors to receive nominations in every decade from the 1960s to the 2000s. What's even more amazing about Nicholson's career is how distinct each of his Oscar victories was. In 1976, he stunned the world with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, all during that incredible period from 1970 to 2003. In 1984, he won and lost hearts with his charms, and by 1998 he was reinventing himself once more with the best of them. Then there's Ray Nicholson, whose rise isn't just about talent but something far stranger. The resemblance to his father is so uncanny that it unsettles people. Born in February 1992 to actress Rebecca Broussard, Ray once had no interest in acting. His final nomination came at age 65, proving that Hollywood's age rules never applied to him. For years he avoided the industry that defined his family name. In 2024, Smile 2 changed all of that. The performance was good, but there was one element that made viewers uneasy: the grin. That same frightful, untamed grin that Jack had etched into the annals of film with The Shining in 1980. He had originally intended to be an astronaut. It reappeared on enormous billboards, but this time it featured his son's face. Ray acknowledged that this event changed everything for him, telling him that he no longer needed to hide, and that he could act and still be his father's son. Fans took notice, and side-by-side comparisons erupted on social media. According to Ray, who calls his father his hero, he remembers eating dinner with him every night, watching him, and learning from him. In his own words, that's how he learned to be a human being. Jack, on the other hand, has always talked proudly of his son. Critics referred to it as a disturbing tribute. One man who dominated the Oscars for decades, he told a magazine back in 2008 that although Ray might keep things to himself, once he made up his mind, no one could talk him out of it. He would follow through and take care of business, regardless of what people thought. The result is a Hollywood tale that seems almost otherworldly. Another who brings his face, his demeanor, and even his insanity to the screen, not due to a casting call or contract, but because it's in his blood.